It was. Let's start with this. The Celtics were overwhelmed early in the first quarter. They collapsed late in the fourth quarter and were awful from the free throw line. All three of those are pressurized situations. Starting on the road, finishing on the road, standing by yourself at the free throw line. Celtics were bad in all of them. It's almost like these young guys have never been in the finals before. Meanwhile, the Warriors were fantastic early, setting the tone. On fire late, confident, closing it out. And tremendous at the free throw line, almost like they've been in the finals 6 of 8 years. It was also the Warriors' best defensive effort. And you really knew, here was a big moment in the game. When Boston had that brief 6-7 minute run in the third when they could not miss on threes. Golden State didn't collapse. They kept shooting threes. They were playing aggressively. They couldn't get shots to fall. They could not get shots to fall. But they didn't sink into a hole. The minute the fourth quarter starts, boom, they're back on top, and it's smooth sailing. In the lowest points for the Celtics in this game, they lost confidence. I watched the first 7 minutes of this game without the sound on. I was at home, and I was on a call with my daughter, and it was an important call, so I had to watch, take notes, and I told her, I said, I got to watch this, but I'm listening. So I turned the sound down, and it's interesting when you don't have the announcers persuading you or the crowd. You get no commentary. You just watch it. Like it heightens your sense, right? And to start the game, the Celtics were so tight. Their body language was so bad. It was so clunky. And the Warriors were loose and fluid and fast and running. And it's like, yep, younger teams. We've seen this before. Tatum's 24. Robert Williams, 24. Jason Tatum, 25. They can shrink in these moments. The Warriors have kids too, but they're all on the bench. Wiseman's not playing. Kuminga's not playing. Moody's not playing. 3 potential stars. Kuminga, I think, is amazing. The only young guy that's playing for them is Jordan Poole, who's 22, and he doesn't have a key role. He played like 15, 16 minutes. So there's just advantages here with experience, and it doesn't end with a roster. Ime Udoka's done a great job, but Steve Kerr has played in 5 finals, has coached in 6 finals. And I'm watching it last night, and I'm feeling like this is starting to feel a lot like those Belichick-Patriot playoff games. They'd just been in so many of those situations. They just knew at the perfect time all the right levers to pull. Were they more talented? Arguable. Did they always have momentum in those games? Not really. But they just kind of started well, took a lead, finished strong, and were able to survive 3.5 hours. The middle parts, the second and the third quarter, when you throw an interception, you lose a fumble, you get sacked. And that's what it's starting to feel like. And I said before this series, I felt this. I said, I think Boston has more quality two-way guys, better defensive players, younger in their prime. But Golden State's got more guys that could end up with 18 points. They have more offensive weapons. And last night, boy, was that an example. So Wiggins ends up with 26, and Clay ends up with 21, and Jordan Poole ends up with 14. Gary Payton's a defensive stopper. He ended up with 15, which was more than that the entire Celtics bench scored. So I feel like, yes, there are matchups that play to the Celtics, and they do have a deeper reservoir of two-way guys that can defend and score. But this is the NBA. It's a 75-25, 70-30 offense over defense league. And between the Warriors' coaching, between the Warriors' experience, and between the Warriors' more talented offensive roster as the league has pivoted like the NFL to a more offensive league, I feel like the Celtics are a little overwhelmed the last 2 games. They just don't have enough ammo. And the other thing, and I go back to watching the first 6-7 minutes without sound, I'm watching the body language. What I really feel like in the last 2 games that has happened, the Celtics are just more uncomfortable more often in this series. Is it the Warriors' defense? Is it the lack of experience? I don't know. But as I sat there watching it without the sound on, I'm like, everybody should watch it like this. You should watch like 6 or 7 minutes without the sound on. Don't be influenced by the announcers or the crowd, the cheering, the booing, whatever. Just watch the body language of the players. You could see it with Boston. That was a big spot. They couldn't hit free throws. They were terrible early, and they collapsed late, and Jaylen Brown talked about it.
They're a really good defensive team. Discipline is sound. They're going to force us to do what, obviously, we don't do best. So we just got to continue to recognize the game, see the game, and make in-game adjustments and take care of the ball when it comes down to it. Another game with too many turnovers, and it costs us.
Listen, we knew coming into this series, Boston was not a great clutch team. They have these things in the NBA called clutch time stats. Boston's bottom of the league. We knew that. We knew the Warriors were better clutch, and the Celtics were bad. We've seen that. We also knew coming into the series that the Warriors were a much better shooting team, especially from distance. I think the Celtics ended the regular season like 14th. So there's things we knew. And a lot of times when you get into a final or a Super Bowl or a conference championship or the Final Four or the World Cup, you're trying to hide your flaws. There's no perfect teams with a salary cap, right? Baseball, you could have a perfect team. You could just buy it. Dodgers batting order is nearly perfect. Yankees pitching is nearly perfect, right? But you're not going to have that in salary cap sports. So what you're trying to do is often elevate your stars, and they do that on their own a lot, but hide your flaws. Celtics' lack of clutch, the Celtics' inability to shoot consistently, it feels like it's caught up to them. So speaking of shooting, I knew this would get talked about. Steph Curry did not hit a three-pointer. Oh, my Lord. My takeaway. So what? I mean, does Steph Curry at this point need to defend his shooting? He's the greatest shooter in the history of the league. Really? Shakespeare came out with a bad play. What does he have to defend himself? At some point, this is what he does better than anybody ever. He actually played well. He was a plus 15 plus minus. He had 8 assists. He easily played his best defensive game of the series. And I thought he did a great job. And this is why his ball handling is so underrated. When the Celtics go dry, you can sense it. They look tight. When the Warriors went dry in the third quarter, they were still loose. They just couldn't hit shots. And a lot of that is just Curry's ability he drives, he gets stopped. You can't trap the Warriors. Nobody moves like the Warriors. Nobody cuts like the Warriors. And that's all initiated by Steph Curry. I mean, would you rather have Jason Tatum doubting himself after a bad quarter or Steph Curry saying today, I'm just going to keep shooting? I saw Michael Jordan in a closeout game shoot 26%. They won. By the way, they won. I saw Tom Brady in his first year in Tampa. NFC Championship, I think it was against Green Bay, was terrible. Terrible. And they won. Warriors won. And for the record, Steph, Michael, Brady, when they have these clunkers, they're always great the next game. But when I watched Steph, again, Tatum feels like, he had played well last night for his standards, but he feels like he's shrinking occasionally in big spots in the series. Steph's just missing shots. There's a big difference between shrinking and missing shots. Steph continues to be fluid, keeps assisting, keeps shooting, keeps initiating offense. And again, I thought last night Steph's defense was easily the best he'd played in the series. So, and that's the difference. If I'm Boston, I'm flying back home and I'm thinking, so Steph's like 0 for 9 on threes, and we got housed? That's not a good flight home. We got housed. And Steph was the coldest he's been in 4.5 years. So I think, as Draymond Green said after, Steph and shooting, he gonna be fine.
Whether Steph gets 43, 10, and 4, or whether he finishes with 16 on 7 for 22 shooting, a win is a win. He was 0 for 9 from 3. He's going to be livid going into Game 6. And that's exactly what we need.
For the record, Kevin Durant's watching this now thinking,